You ever wanted to get into PoE, but it was always too overwhelming? What are these sockets? What are these weird support gems? And oh my god, look at this ginormous skill tree.
Wow, that's a lot of words. Too bad I'm not reading them.
Well, look no further, because I'm going to explain you how the basics of the game work and at the same time show you a decent build that you can copy if you want to get to know the game. The build is strong enough to carry you into very late maps, and on top of that you should be tanky enough that you don't die all the time, which can be a fun killer for sure. I will explain to you how I usually walk through the campaign to get to maps as fast as I can, and on top of that to get all the skill points while we are leveling up. And then second of all, I'm going to explain to you the most basic things. Now this is mostly tailored towards the ranger class here, but it does apply to any other class as well. You just have to look up guides that will help you out with these. So if you enjoy content like this, leave a like and subscribe for more. If you're new to Path of Exile and you want to get into the game, when you create yourself a new character, you can either go standard, which is the boring part of the game. You can go and click one of the two ones right here, which are more interesting. These are usually the seasons that you pick. And you can decide between solo, self-found and ruthless. I would not go for ruthless, which is a very difficult mode. I think for a beginner, it makes sense if you go the softcore route. You can select one of these 7 classes. I will be showcasing what you can do as a ranger when you're new. If you're looking for another class, you can try out other classes too. Okay, so when you first go into the game, right, you're presented with this screen. When you click anywhere, your dude wakes up, and if you want, you can skip all the tutorials, but if you're new, I mean, they're obvious, but if you're new, you should go through them. But basically, if you have played ARPGs before, you're going to Giga Chat, close that button, and then it will auto-equip your item, which makes you then talk to the dude and you kill this guy. And so this is where the first part, for anyone that is new to Path of Exile, that don't understand really how it works, or doesn't understand. You pick up gems, and these gems are your abilities. And these abilities have to be slotted into weapons, and the color of the gems corresponds to the color of the slots on the item, which means this green gem goes into a green socket. We get a support gem, which means that our ability, which is the burning arrow, I could shoot that right here. This is your bar, this is your ability that you picked up, and it has a slot open, which can be used to support your ability burning arrow. And basically you have to read through this, but it gives you movement speed and attack speed. In my opinion, it's not the best support gem, but it works for the first time. And you can also see on the left of the ability that burning arrow is a supported skill that we can lock with this, you know. And so we do that, boom, and now our ability gets the N letter, meaning it is now supported by momentum. And when we hit, we get this momentum stack at the top, which gives us attack speed and movement speed. And then another thing, which I find annoying in many ARPG games, and that is actually very easy to do in this game, you have left click, which is your default attack. So you can left click on these and bind that to move only. And that is the first thing that I would do on any character ever, because you do not want to accidentally hit a mob when you want to run away. You don't actually have to kill all the monsters in this area, which is a level 1 area. It is enough to kill this guy right here to get to level 2. Many players usually rush through this to get to the boss, get to level 2, and then pick up all the items he drops. So when you're in town, keep it simple. I usually sell all of the items unless I really find a good one. Even the yellow item is very important to sell. When selling items, you might have noticed that you don't get any gold. And that is true, because in Path of Exile, you are trading for currency. What you should be getting is a bunch of scroll fragments. And if you had any yellow or blue items, you should be getting transmutation shards. These are fragments that can upgrade into a fully fledged currency item. For example, the scroll fragment upgrades into a scroll of wisdom. A scroll of wisdom is used to identify an unidentified item. This should be quite obvious. Transmutation shards, on the other hand, are special currency. They upgrade into an orb of transmutation. This upgrades a normal item to a magic item. For example, this tricone right here is white. If I use an orb of transmutation on it, it becomes a magic item. So this currency can be used to make your items more powerful if you want to. In addition to transmutation shards, there is another currency that you can get, which is alteration shards. These obviously upgrade into orbs of alteration. And if you read through them, they reforge a magic item with new random properties. For example, on the tricone, we got regenerate life per second. Using an orb of alteration gives us a new property. Note when you hold down Alt, you can see a subtext above the modifiers. The first one is a prefix modifier called dancers. The other one is a suffix modifier of thick skin. It should be noted that each magic item can only have one prefix and one suffix. So these two items can be used to upgrade any bad items you have into magic items. But they also have more important usages than just that. For example, if you go to Nessa and you want to buy yourself a new skill gem, if you take a look at added cold damage, for example, this one costs 1 orb of transmutation. So if you want to switch up your build and get another skill gem, you have to invest an orb of transmutation. On a fresh start, for example, this currency should be saved up for exactly that reason. The same holds true for orbs of alteration. But there is yet a third usage. If you teleport to your hideout and go to your crafting bench, as you travel through the campaign, you will unlock more and more recipes. You can craft certain properties on your gear. For example, on rings, you can add in elemental damage. Cold damage, for example, takes in 4 orbs of transmutation, and it is a quite hefty boost, especially early on. Other noteworthy currency items are, for example, the portal scrolls. Then we have the chromatic orb. This one reforges the colors of your sockets on the item. For example, I have 3 green sockets. If I use one, it changes the color of each one of these sockets to a random one, but there is also a catch. I know this is a lot to take in, so take your time with this. An item that has a requirement of dexterity, if you take a look at the color of dexterity, it is green. So the higher the dexterity requirement of an item, the more likely it is that it receives green sockets. Take a look at my iron scale boots here, for example. They have a split requirement between strength and dex, meaning that the likelihood of a red socket and a green socket is the same. But it should be noted that you are still able to roll blue sockets, as you can see here. The chance of them is just lower than for red and green sockets. So if you find an item, take a look at the requirements to make sure that you can actually roll all of the colors on it if you need to. Otherwise, you will just be wasting your chromatic orbs for no reason. And that is a noob trap, so don't be a noob. Another noteworthy currency is the Orb of Alchemy. This upgrades a normal item to a rare item. I often use these on either weapons or rings if I, for example, need a damage boost and I found a good weapon base, or I need a defense boost. Most of the rings give resistances, and if you use one of these on a ring, you can get lucky and get an additional resistance stat on it together with some HP. For example, I hit the fire resistance here. Unfortunately, I didn't hit any life, but this could potentially be an upgrade to my current rings, which it isn't. In addition to Orbs of Alchemy, you will also encounter what are called essences. They have specific modifiers that always apply to the certain base type that you use the item on. For example, bows will always get the cold damage modifier on them if they are being used on a bow. Essences can be found throughout the world by encountering entrapped monsters. You have to click on them a couple of times to free them and then kill them. The essences they contain are random, but I would urge you to always go and make them. Lastly, there's flasks. And flasks can be crafted too. For example, we can take an orb of transmutation and apply that to a quicksilver flask. In addition, we can also use orbs of alteration. The same can be done to life flasks. I can apply an orb of transmutation to make it magic, and once you get to around level 40, you should be looking for a flask like this. The important stat here is the immunity to bleeding for 9 seconds and the immunity to corrupted blood for 9 seconds. This one can be a killer if you don't have it on your flask. Bleeds do 150% more damage if you're running, which is what we do like 99% of the time in Path of Exile. And then talking to this guy right here gives you a gem. I always pick up Galvanic Arrow. I think it's the most powerful ability, and it gives you the best clear early on, and it can be used with totems later on. So I always use that, and I don't use Burning Arrow at all. You can, if you want to, keep Burning Arrow and then do some micromanagement, but I usually just slot this out and then sell that for an extra fragment here. And I usually also always sell these transmutation shards because I get more scrolls of wisdom. And more scrolls of wisdom, we have 5 right now, means I can purchase more items from the vendor. And the reason why we buy items is because, oh wow, this one's very good. Cold damage and rarity of, and it's a 3-link. I'll buy this. You wanna buy items to give you more defense. Evasion rating, and it depends. If you're playing an armor class, I'm playing an evasion rating class. They give you much more defense and you won't die as much. So I usually always pick up this chest. Many people will tell you not to do so because you run faster, but I think this is the best item to buy. It costs 1 wisdom scroll and gives you a huge amount of defense, which means you don't die as much. And then I pick up these bad boys because they give me damage and they look fucking cool. And you can also check for movement speed on boots, but we don't have that here. So if you click on this icon, because you have a passive skill point. Many people or many players are overwhelmed by the by the skill, you know, when you're just starting out, and there are so many nodes, you don't know where to go. And so I recommend that if you want to have the most amount of fun, because I haven't done so in the beginning, you look up a guide on which nodes to place as you level up, because otherwise you will deal no damage, you will die all the time, and you won't have fun in the game. So, but in my case, we go and pick up damage and accuracy rating. You might have noticed the progress bar on the right. This displays the current experience points of the momentum support gem. So that means any gems that you equip gather experience points whenever you kill enemies. And this is the way you level up skills in Path of Exile. So you go immediately to the mud flats, which is, you know, the area that is level 4. And this area is very dangerous, which is why we picked up defenses. And in this area you want to pick up these roar nests. And so these roar nests are usually in a triangle. So if I have this guy, picked up this guy right here, I'm guessing that the one next is not here. Okay, it's not here. Always think in terms of triangles, and then you should find these guys. And then if you want to progress here, you have to move up. Once you enter the submerged passage, there's going to be a waypoint, and I want you to teleport back to the coast, the first waypoint that you picked up. We need to go there because there's a location right next to it called the Tidal Island. On the island, we need to kill a boss because the quest reward for killing him is a flask that increases our movement speed. We go there second because at level 4 we are strong enough to kill the boss. When you're leveling up, take a look at all the items that drop. For example, these boots that I found here. They have 3 connected sockets that are all green. This will allow me to support my ability by 2 gems instead of 1. And this will increase my damage, making it easier for me to progress through the campaign. I just killed the boss, and if you take a look at the items, you might not think it, but they are actually very small. And on top of that, it is very difficult to distinguish good items from bad ones. And so usually what people do is they change the way the items look. That is possible by going to a website called Filterblade. I will put the link in the description, and I'm going to quickly walk you through how it works. When you open up the website, it should look something like this. On top you can see a selection that says Neversink SC, which stands for softcore, then Neversink HC, which stands for hardcore. I usually just select softcore and then normal, which adds a basic item highlighting to the game that is much better than the default one. If you want to know how it looks, you can go into the simulate tab, and then on the right here you can change the zone level. For example, if we go to the current level that we are, which is level 4, we can then generate loot and see how it looks. You can see that it's very cluttered, but it's also much bigger. And certain items, like for example this coral amulet or this pure amulet, they are highlighted much more than the other items. If you want, you can also customize the filter, but I don't want to go into too much detail right now. The default one should always be good. So once you have selected your loot filter, you can then go into the save and export section, which will tell you that you're not logged into POE. And the easiest way to get the filter is by logging into Path of Exile on the website. So you click that button, and then you sign in whatever you want to sign in with. So for me, that is going to be the email. When you're logged in, you will see this page. Basically, it's asking for a bunch of permissions. Once you authorize, you're back at this page, and then you can put in a name at the top. I'm going to call it test or something, and then sync or download. After that, you can save and sync. This will upload the filter to your profile, and then you can see it in game, and you don't have to manage any files. It's all virtual. And then you're going to upload the filter to Path of Exile. After that, you should see at the bottom that it successfully saved the filter. When you now log into the game, you press escape and go into the options. Then you go into the game tab. You can see the item filter option right here. And if you click this drop down menu, your test filter should appear right here. Then selecting this will load in the filter and should give you a message in chat that the item filter loaded successfully. So you see how the item changed and is much bigger now. And if I put down this guy right here, it's also much bigger now. It is easier to click. Look, like the difference between none or default and the Neversink softcore is huge. In my opinion, it is much easier than having the default one. Bigger items to click. Okay, we go back. And you can go back by logging out and then logging back in to save a portal scroll if you want to. I usually do that in the beginning because we don't have many portal scrolls. Okay, you talk to Nessa first, you get a flask. You always pick the movement speed flask because that is very important. You want to go fast in the game. And then for Raider, we pick up Mirage Archer. Mirage Archer is very important. and link that to galvanic arrow. Okay, this time we have enough stuff. I'm actually going to sell a portal scroll here, so we have one more, and I can buy myself a ring to give me more physical attack damage. And then also allocate these 2 points. We go into damage and we pick up sharpener, ballista and dash. And then I put up my skills. You can click on the icons at the bottom here to decide where you want your abilities to go. I usually put my ballista on Q. And then I also decide whether I want to always activate it without moving. Because if you're out of range, your character starts moving. So that option is very interesting and important. Then we continue with the submerged passage. Okay, once we get to the bridge in the submerged passage, we place down a portal for later. The reason why that is, we need to go back here and grab a quest that gives us skill points. Okay, so we try to run as fast as we can through the zone while not killing too many monsters, because we have our portal scroll and we don't want that to expire. Yeah, this place right here is always very dangerous. We have to tread carefully because there's a lot of monsters. I usually skip this boss. And this is where we pick up the waypoint and go back to the waypoint we set earlier. So basically we get the waypoint here, we go back to town. And hopefully, if we were fast enough, we still have the waypoint to the submerged passage, which is where we want to pick up the skill points. We want to pick up all the skill points we can while leveling up. Okay, we picked up an HP flask here, very important. Always upgrade them. You wanna try to find the big area here in this zone. You wanna try to get into the area and then you have this nipple right here that you can dash over. Okay, once back in town, we get a new skill gem from Nessa and we pick up added cold damage and link that with our sharpener ballista. Oh, we have a short bow actually. Didn't even see that. Okay, we found a good upgrade here. And the rest can go. Don't need it. We don't need more support gems from Nessa right now. But we can pick up the Ballista Totem support for later. And if you have the currency, you can buy that now. If not, you'll buy it later. So I'll pick this up right now and start leveling it already. I'm just gonna put it here. And then on Tarkley, we get our skill point and quickly check if we can get a quiver. No, we can't. I pick up these 2 skill points here, even more damage. And this is when we start going into defense from this point onward. In this area, you want to always try to go top right first, because there is an Ascendancy trial. And if you're new, you don't know what that means. But it basically means that these trials have to be unlocked in order to gain more power later on, in order to specialize into a class. And we are going to be radar later, which means we have to unlock these trials. I think that is the only annoying part, or one of the annoying parts of the game. I don't even mind playing through the campaign, but having to do all of these trials every time. So in this area, you want to try to move up first, see if there is a way. It looks like this is a dead end. Over here, you just want to follow the trail. Okay, once in town, I usually sell all the items, boom. And this is where we change our dash to Frostblink. This one right here is just 1,000,000 times superior than dash. And we can actually also do it without moving always. Like, we can lock that in. If you do that on dash, you can try it out. It's terrible. And then over here, we also get the blink arrow. And over here you want to look for the ledge, like this ledge right here. One of them is going to be a mountain range and the other one is going to be where the ledge is. Okay, in this area we want to try to find the waypoint first. And then we want to find the shipyard graveyard cave. A ship graveyard cave. This is where we get another skill point. While you're leveling, you will obviously be picking up items. And important stats to look out for are life and resistances. In my opinion, these are the priority stats if you want to have a smooth leveling experience. Obviously on weapons you want to have damage, but you should always strive to max your resistances to 75%. If you forget about them, you will get one shot most of the time and the game will feel bad. And if you die, you will actually lose some of your experience that you gained. And oftentimes new players will forsake these resistances and then wonder why the game is so hard or why they keep on dying. On boots, you always want to look out for another stat called movement speed. Here are some examples of boots that are very good. For example, these are available at level 1 and the most important stat on those are movement speed. Somewhat mid-tier items, very important is resistances. These ones don't have HP, but if you hold down Alt, you can actually see that it has 2 prefixes and 3 suffixes. So that means there's an open prefix and HP can be crafted onto these if you want to. And here's another pair of boots. They have a very high life and resistance count, and more importantly they have an open prefix. That means you can go to your hideout, to the crafting bench in it, and then you can craft movement speed on them, which will result in a perfect pair of boots that you can use even leveling up to maps. Okay, once you get to the cave, which is the Mervel's Caverns, you teleport back to the shipyard graveyard. And you try to go to this book, or if the book is nearby. This book will locate where our quest NPC is, Fairgraves, and he's going to give us a skill point if we kill him. Okay, once back in town, we have to talk to Nessa again. So this is where we get our level 12 skill gem. I pick up Rain of Arrows. In my opinion, Rain of Arrows is the best skill choice to level up because it has a very high area of effect. You don't have to worry about pierce, and the single target is not actually that bad because there's multiple projectiles that can hit the boss. And so compared to the other options, which are mostly single target options, Rain of Arrows is the best because we can link it with added cold damage and Mirage Archer. That means that we hit Rain of Arrows once while running, and the Mirage Archer is going to keep attacking while hitting a large area while we are running. We replace Rain of Arrows with Galvanic Arrow, or Galvanic Arrow with Rain of Arrows. So, and then I also replace Momentum because it's dog shit. Actually, that's Mirage Archer. Momentum sucks. And now I should have enough. If you don't, try to sell as many of these blue and yellow items. Another added cold damage. The most amount of damage for the ability that we can have. And now this is where Ballista Totem comes into play. We want to use Ballista Totem with our Galvanic Arrow together with added cold damage. This one does way more damage than the Sharpener Ballista on its own. And we will also be replacing that later on as well. This is all the skill changes we need to do. And at this point, if you have some stuff left over, you can get yourself Vitality or Precision. If you want to have some Survivability or Damage. So I will just pick up Precision here. And then we go talk to Bestel and he's going to give us another skill point. And then we start going here because this one is OP. Like the 20% attack damage and movement speed. The general direction in which you want to walk in the Caverns of Anger is somewhat top right. Now this is not always correct, but it is the general idea of what I always walk to, and you should always find the next area somewhat in that direction. Cavern of Anger, we go through that too, basically the same one as the one before. Well, be careful of these motherfuckers here though. These red ones, they can one-shot you. And if you play on hardcore, I'm pretty sure you have died to them before. I have. Definitely watch out for these exploding guys in the Caverns of Anger. They run very fast and Rain of Arrows always has like this ramp up time before it shoots down. So it is very dangerous running through this area. I think I'm leveling up a little bit too much. Wow, okay, I just died. So yeah, don't do what I did. This is why I don't play on hardcore for this, okay bro? Because that was bullshit. You see how our mana goes up as we attack? And I'm not using a mana potion. Wow, this is the mana node that we picked up earlier. And if you don't pick up that node, you will struggle for mana in this fight. Oh, we killed her. Cool. Oh my god, look at that fucking quiver. Oh, and we got a yellow ring. Oh my god, thank you. And we got a fucking amulet. Oh, wow, I got the big loot. Damn, I'm wasting all my loot. Oh, and movement speed. Wait, and we have a 3-link ready to swap our gems over. So this is scripted, right? So this is what you get when you're streaming, guys. The general direction of the southern forest is just to go straight up. Then over here in the camp, just sell all the items unless you really want to keep something. And then we go out to the right. In this area, since I already have a Quicksilver flask, usually you want to get to 2 Quicksilver flasks. There's a quest that you can do that gives you a Quicksilver flask. If you want to go fast, you can do it. If you don't, you have to like find this cave right here. And usually when you find the cave, you just put down a portal and then you move on. We take this waypoint right here, then we go back to the town and go back to the portal. Unfortunately, I don't know a general direction in this cave. I always just try to wing it. If I notice that I'm walking too far or too long, usually this is a dead end. So we want to find this guy right here. Okay, once back, we go and talk to Yina, which will give us another Quicksilver flask. I just did this to showcase. I don't actually need it because I already have 2. And then we go back to the waypoint in the crossroads and we go to the top left, which is where our next quest is. Then over here, usually I go to the left, then down and try to cross and find this part right here, which is where the teleporter will be. And then once you get to the teleporter, it will indicate where the next zone is. We need to find another trial, Ascendancy trial that we did earlier in Act 1. And it's usually indicated by these books on the minimap. Okay, and then once you have the trial, you just move down to find this area where it leads you using a carpet. We kill the boss and pick up the gem, and then we head back to town. We pick up Herald of Ice on the quest reward from Groost. And then when we sell items, when they're identified, we get alteration shards, which gives us orbs of alteration. We don't have one right now. And now we want one more item to buy, which is why I got myself 1 alteration shard. So we pick up Blood Rage. And then Blood Rage will make us degen, which means we go back to Act 1. I usually pick up Vitality. Now we're getting close on sockets, as you can see, right? So we have to micromanage where we put our shit. It still works, but we're getting really close. So if you can't pick up all the gems, then just don't use Blood Rage for now. But we pick up Herald of Ice, which is a buff. We pick up Blood Rage and usually put that on E. So if we slot that in right now, will not work. So we slot in Vitality. And then we slot in Blood Rage. The cool thing is, Vitality will heal us and we can use Blood Rage at the same time and we don't have any degen. When you're in the Western Forest, the road is in the middle. Where the teleporter is where a bandit is that we need to kill. And so we go to that bandit, and usually when you just go straight up, you will find the bandit on the same side where the teleporter is. I'm going to kill her for the 2 skill points. And then once you are done with that, you're going to run straight down. So when you run down, you get to this guy right here, the Captain Arteri. You kill him, get this emblem, and then click this seal right here. This is another skill point that we will get later. Okay, then once you're done, you're going to run straight up, but in the opposite side now. We need to go to the opposite side as well. And then in this area, I usually try to move up first, if I can move up, because that is oftentimes the right way to go, but it doesn't always work out. So if it's not, then you have to do some backtracking. Okay, so we have just done the left side, and then we go here to this guy, and he's going to give us a gem that we can't use yet. Elemental damage with attacks is great, but we can't use it yet. So you can pick it up, but I usually just leave it here. If we pick it up, then it's not. Then it's going to sit at level 18, which I guess it's fine. Let's pick it up. Okay, we'll use that later. We need elemental damage. Okay, so once we are done with that, we go back to the crossroads because we have to kill 2 more bandits. Once at the crossroads, we need to follow the road on the top right to get to the next area. Cool, and we found a bow, a composite bow. And now we can solve our problem, Poggers. This elemental damage with attacks is not going to level if we just keep it in our inventory, but we can swap weapons by pressing the, and for me it's X key. You could also click on these icons. Then you put the weapon in your second slot, you put this thing in there, boom. You can swap back to 1, and it's going to level the gem passively in your offhand. In the broken bridge, you usually just have to follow the road. At some point, you're going to get to a bridge, and this is where you have to fight yet another bandit. And then after we are done with that, we go to the riverways. In this area, we try to find Grust, which is another bandit, and he's usually like somewhere in the middle. And then once we are done with this, we try to go towards like somewhat top left-ish. We are done with our quest and we can actually turn that in the town right now, which this guy will give us 2 skill points. And this is when we pick up Precise Technique. And this one is very important. The way this works is you deal 40% more damage if your accuracy rating, which you can find on your character's stats page, is higher than your HP. My HP is 379, which is very low at this point. So if my accuracy rating is higher than my HP, I deal 40% more damage. So I have 169 right now. I add in the note. I have 236 damage. This one is gonna carry us in the early game all the way until we get crit, which is quite early before maps. And this is also the reason why we use precision, because precision gives us accuracy rating. Now, I wish I could tell you how to progress through the Val Ruins, but to be quite frankly, I have no clue. Speedrunners say that you want to go in a zigzag pattern. I have tried that, and if you take a look at the minimap, it somewhat resembles a, I don't know, zigzag pattern, but it's always trial and error for me, and I usually end up in many dead ends along the way. And yeah, good luck. We're finding the right way in this one. I hate it. The Northern Forest, on the other hand, is a lot easier. The general direction in here is somewhat to the top left. Don't get distracted by the cave entrance that you find along the way. If you want, you can do it. The correct way will be when you find a waterfall, and that is the entrance to the next area. In the caverns, you want to head down, and don't ever try to walk up again. That is the wrong way. And at some point, you will encounter a teleporter, at which point you know you're on the right track. And at this point, I also go back to town because I forgot a very early skill gem that we have to pick up for the boss. It gives us a lot more damage. So there is a new skill gem that you can get. It is right here. It's called Sniper's Mark. 16% increased damage from projectiles on enemies. So basically you deal 16% more damage when you use that ability. And I usually put that on W, where I had my move ability until now. And I just remove that. And so this one, look how many slots we have already occupied. So usually I don't have space for this. But I will make space for this instead of Blood Rage, for example, because I think it's a better DPS increase than that. Some additional information about the Ancient Pyramid. Wherever you start in the area, the opposite is usually where you have to go to find the stairs to the next floor. So, for example, if you spawn in the bottom right, then it is very likely that on the top left, you will find the stairs to the next floor. And then we get to Act 3. Oh, actually, before you go to Act 3, this is usually the best time to go over here to the crossroads, because we have to pick up yet another Trial of the Ascendancy. And if we do that too late, then our level is going to be too high, meaning we are not getting enough experience points. This is already very critical, and I should have done it earlier, and I always forget. But at some point, you have to pick up this one right here. I usually just rush through because I have, you know, my potions. I use my movement abilities, go as fast as possible. Okay, we got the Ascendancy. We have our first 3 completed. Now we can go back to town and we can finally start on Act 3, which is one of my favorite acts because we get our Ascendancy and a lot of new awesome skill abilities. Don't forget to talk to her. If you don't, you will have to come back later. Trust me, I've done that mistake. When you get to the town, do not immediately go to the left, but turn right when you can, because there's an area that you need to go through first. We have to complete that area first because there's a quest. And if we are done with that quest, we then get a key so we can progress in the story. Okay, we have to pick up another Trial of the Ascendancy here. Don't forget that. And now we can focus on the quest, which should be to the right of us, because we've seen that this is where it goes. Okay, once back in town, we talk to Clarissa. We get the sewer keys. Only this time we go into the sewer system. Something that looks like this. So when you go through the map the first time, look out for something that looks like that. This area is always a good time to check your resistances to make sure that you have at least some of them so you don't get one shot. I usually target at least like 20 to 30% across the board by this time. Especially lightning resistance in this area is very important. Over here for the quests that we pick up, these busts, there's always one of them before the teleporter, and then there's 2 below the teleporter. In this act, you should start looking for a 4-link. You want the colors red and then triple green, which is very easy to get on an evasion base, meaning that it is only evasion on the item. Don't worry if you can't get it straight away. A 3-link is also possible and will carry you no problem. Okay, once you get to the waypoint in the area though, there is another area, the catacombs. It doesn't have any quest objectives, but guess what? We have to go here anyways. We want to find the Ascendancy trial. Of course, we have to do another Ascendancy trial. We get back to the encampment and we get ourselves a new skill point. Cool. And then I picked this one up, and now we have 2 refund points, meaning we can get rid of 1 mana point. Usually I pick up HP. I go this way. Okay, now we're done with that, and then we go back to the marketplace. And then over in the marketplace, we try to run top right. And then once next to the teleporter, we need to pick up this ribbon spool, which is right next to it. We go to the docks, which is where we have to pick up another quest item. And usually in the docks, I try to level up to level 26. I'm level 27, so I'm just going to breeze past this quest item right here. Once you pick up the quest item, teleport back to town and then go back to the previous waypoint. And then we start to go into the temple, which is usually located in the top right section of the map. In the temple, try to follow the carpets. It is not 100% correct, but you can use it as a general guidance. Once you get to the teleporter, which also has the quest NPC next to it, make sure that you not only pick up the items, but also go through the door that is next to it. Okay, so once you get here, you give her the thing, and what do we want to pick up? She gives us a quest item, and then you also want to go into this door because there's a crafting recipe here that is very useful later. Fire rank 1, and I can actually use it on the bow. So now that we have picked up everything, we go back to the teleporter and we teleport to the sewers because we are now able to progress further from this point. This blockage is now gone and we can keep going. And this is where we kill Gravusius and get our item. We get our artillery ballista. After that, we run straight up into the temple until we reach one of the next teleporters. This is the point where we stop. Okay, so once we get to that point, we're getting close to another boss, and this is usually the time where I go back to town and upgrade my equipment because the next section is very high in fire damage, and so I really need to upgrade this ring. It's dog shit, but we have this fire and cold resistance ring that we picked up earlier, so we can use something on the ring, and I think I'm going to use an orb of alchemy, please. Wow, it's really good. Now we need to look for open suffixes. For example, a suffix is open here. Lightning resistance and accuracy rating and strength. And so this is where we go into our hideout, and every single item that has an open suffix is spelled. We miss cold resistance the most. So we get ourselves here and then we craft cold resistance. This is what we need the transmutations for, right? So we craft, of course, it's 16, which is the lowest amount of cold resistance on it. Nice. And we have this helmet here as well. I think I want to use an essence on it. And then hopefully it has not an open suffix, but it has 2 resistances, so that's great too. And the quiver does not have an open suffix as well, and the boots don't have an open suffix as well. So I basically get fucked in the ass by the game and RNG, but that's fine. We have 50% everywhere. That should be good enough. And if you really wanna get some more resistances, pick up this node. If you have some left over and you have open prefixes on some of your items, like for example on this ring and on this bow, you can go right here. Remember the fire damage that we got earlier? Look at the fucking value of this. 41 fire damage for 4 transmutations. Just look at the damage difference. 573, 700. That is huge. And so that's what I usually do when I get to that boss or get close to that boss. I, bump up my equipment. After we are done upgrading our equipment, we go back to the encampment and talk to Maramoa. And then this is where we pick up our bad boy. Artillery Ballista. In case you're wondering, this will replace our galvanic arrow. We will still be using rain of arrows, but the totem that we have been using before is now gone and we will use artillery ballista instead. There's 2 versions that you can go to. You can go the non-crit route where you go for precise technique first and then later on you switch to crit. This requires a lot of respec points, but you will get enough throughout the campaign to do that. You can also go the non-precise technique route, which lets you go into crit immediately. So this is the first version of the skill tree with precise technique. Obviously, you start out with projectile damage. Then you go over here and pick up Primal Spirit. After that, you pick up Apex of the Lynx for the movement speed. Then you go for more movement speed. And after that, you travel down to precise technique. Then you can go for even more attack speed and accuracy rating. And this is where we pick up increases and reductions to projectile speed, also applied to increase damage. At this point, we want to get some life, so we pick up this one right here and respec 1 point here. And then we start picking up life over here to the right, and the 50% life node as the mastery. Then we head down and we pick up the totem nodes, because we are primarily a totem user. And over here, we can go for the 5% less damage taken if you feel like you're taking a lot of damage, but I would always go for the 30% additional summon. At this point, you should be like level 30, 34, and you should have your artillery ballista. Again, the links to the artillery ballista Ballista should be as follows. You have your Artillery Ballista, your added cold damage, your elemental damage with attacks, and if you have a 4-link, then you want to get faster attacks. This should be your 4-link, and if you don't have a 4-link, this should be your 3-link. Artillery Ballista, cold damage and elemental damage. At this point, we also pick up our Ascendancy, which is the Raider. As the Raider, of course, we go for Onslaught permanent. And as we pick up the permanent Onslaught, we want to travel down to this node right here. Graceful Assault, which increases not only our armor and evasion rating, but it also increases our onslaught effect. At this point, we can also pick up Thick Skin, and generally at this point, we want to make sure that our life is about 1300, because this is where we will be in Act 5, and we will have to fight Innocence and Kitava, and those two fights are very difficult fights and they require a lot of HP. So usually at this point, I travel up to the dexterity points here, and then unspec out of the damage nodes to get another 4 additional points, so I can travel to this node right here, Revenge of the Hunted, which gives me another 10% HP. And also on top of that, connected to this node is elemental damage with attacks, which applies to our totems as well. These two nodes are very powerful and very good to pick up early. By this point, we should be like level 40, 45, 46, and that should give us enough HP, defense and attack to defeat Innocence and Kitava. At this point, we pick up mostly travel nodes and secondary nodes, like the HP is good right here. And then we travel to the left, which is where we pick up Golem's Blood. And we also want to pick up all of these totem nodes right here at the bottom. And now, usually at this point, somewhat level 55, this is where I prepare to switch over to crit. And the way you do that is you connect these bottom nodes, and then you start unspecking out of these nodes at the top. I usually save up a few skill points. And as you can see, you need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 respec points to get rid of this. And then you can make the push up here to get the 100% increased crit chance with bows. And then for the mastery, we get the one we already picked. You can see that this is quite complicated, which is why there's 2 versions of this. Now at this point, you're level 57, you should be close to 2000 HP, which is definitely not enough. So you will most likely want to pick up the all resist and crit here, and then maybe unspec out of this node. Again, this is another respec point, which is 7 at this point. Additionally, if you need more attack and your defense is fine, you can spec into this now, which is the crit chance. At this point, you also want to pick up this node right here, which gives you reservation efficiency. The reason for that is because we want to add in another ability, which is called Grace. This one gives us more evasion rating and gives us a lot of defense. We will use Grace together with Herald of Ice, a low level precision, which let's not say level 20, but level 1, depending on how much mana you have to spare, for an additional crit chance and accuracy rating. And if you want to, you can also use Vitality. For the mastery of this node, we want to pick up the increased effect of auras on you, and then we want to travel up here to the top, where we get more HP and crit. Now again, this is not set in stone, and I don't want you to follow this to a T, but these are general guidance markers, I would say. These are the nodes that you want to pick up. At this point, you should be around level 70, close to 3000 HP, hopefully, and you should have enough resistances. If you are lacking resistances, there is a good way to get some right here, which is 4% and another 12% for free, in addition to some evasion rating and armor. And then if you're lacking HP, you can also go ahead and pick up this node right here, which requires an additional investment of a couple of points, which will surely get you to 3000 HP. Now at this point, it's mostly what you need. The full build is obviously we need some accuracy rating, especially early on. And then definitely more accuracy rating for dexterity here. We definitely want to have more crits, but before we get that node, we should head over to here and get this node, because we are using frenzy charges, and this is a very simple investment of a jewel socket and an additional frenzy charge. We also want to make sure that we pick up the masteries here. If you need spell suppression, which in the early levels you should be getting, you can take the 15% spell suppression node right here, or if you want to, you can go for the increased movement speed, making you zoom faster. It all depends. I usually pick up this one because I'm hardcore. For you, it can be the movement speed. And then over here, a good one is also the 25% to treat the enemy resistances as inverted. That one can be a good DPS increase. You also want to pick up this node right here, which gives you another jewel socket. You obviously want to pick up the crit. You probably also want to switch over from the attack speed to the crit nodes here at the bottom. Another very good node to pick up is the spell suppression node here, which also gives you life flasks. And additionally, I also pick up the spell suppression simply because I want more defense defense. And at this point we are looking at level 87, which is somewhat of a strong build already. You have been playing the game for a long time at this point, and you should feel comfortable in the build and make minor tweaks if you need to. Additionally, also something that you want to pick up is the crit chance for your totems. And then over here I usually switch over from the 30% to the 5% damage reduction, just so I feel a little safer. Another good mastery to pick up is the immune to poison or bleed mastery, whether you have evasion rating or armor on your helmet. So usually at this point in the very late game I just pick up more HP, and if I don't need that I just go whatever I need to. That is mostly the skill tree. Again, it is not set in stone, but this one, together with a decent bow that you get through essence crafting, you should be able to kill all of the bosses in the game and get up to at least tier 16 maps at minimum, and even then kill the bosses at that point. And then obviously as you go through the campaign, at level 50 you want to pick up Quartz Infusion for the spell suppression and phasing, and then around at level 70 you want to pick up the Avatar of the Veil. This will apply exposure to the monsters, increasing your damage by a lot, and additionally it gives you avoidance to elemental ailments, which is very powerful. And then as your last Ascendancy trial you go for the Avatar of the Chase. You don't need Way of the Poacher because you're already generating frenzy charges by casting Frenzy. So as a final build, when you get to the very end game, you're going to replace the increased attack speed by critical strikes. You also want to pick up critical damage, and then as your 6th link you can go for Inspiration, for example, which gives you crit, in addition to that damage, and in addition to that less mana cost, because we are not generating a lot of mana. This is what a 6th link could look like, but again, it is not set in stone. You can play around with different support gems and see which ones fit the best for you. Grace should be obvious, it is a lot for defense. Herald of Ice should be obvious because that's very good too, and then Precision is also obvious because we need the crit and the accuracy rating. In addition to that, we want to have a new ability called Frenzy. This one is going to be our Frenzy Charge Generator. We want to link that with either lesser or greater multiple projectiles. It doesn't matter which one you use. Then on top of that, we want to have Power Charge on critical. And the third one, it doesn't really matter. You can use, for example, Life on hit. Mana Leech could also be a good one. Or you just leave it empty. But these 3 support gems are the bare minimum. You really need this. If you're lacking crit, you could also go for crit here. Increased critical strikes. The important part is that we generate frenzy charges and we generate power charges. Which, if you take a look right here, we have 60% crit. And then we go to the configuration up here, and then we say, okay, well, we use power charges. Now look at this, we are at 72% crit. And then we use frenzy charges. It also gives us another damage boost. Obviously, this is without any items, just to show you. And then as a last defensive skill, you can go for either Molten Shell, which will give you an armor debuff together with cast when damage taken. Or if you want to, instead of Molten Shell, you can go for Steel Skin. Both of these are defensive ones. Steel Skin gives you a buff that absorbs about 2000 life, and then Molten Shell gives you a buff that absorbs about 5000 life, but not everything at once. Some percentage of damage is taken from the Molten Shell, and the other percentage of damage is taken by you. Both of these options are fine. The only difficult requirement will be the strength requirement of 155. If we take a look at our attributes, we have 74, so you will have to invest into strength on your equipment. Again, this is mostly a hardcore thing, but I feel like I should mention it because this is very important to pick up. And then another thing that you can do if you want to, instead of Herald of Ice, if you really want to go big dick on the defense, instead of that, you pick up Determination. Now you can see that your unreserved mana at this point is at 17% right here at the left, and you have 138 mana left. But if you take a look at the armor, you have about 7000 armor compared to, if I disable that, 1300. That is a lot of physical defense that can help you survive. Okay, I've quickly put that here so we can see the difference. Determination is obviously a very good one to pick up if you want to, but you will lose some DPS. Again, this is without any like special equipment or crazy equipment that you can pick up, but it should give you a general guidance of the options that you have. And then of course, how could I forget, the last one is Frost Blink as a movement ability. And if you really want, you can also use, instead of Frost Blink, you could use Flame Dash. Flame Dash or Frost Blink both do a good job. So yeah, that's about the build. Feel free to experiment with this. Now I want to quickly reset the tree and show you the other version, the crit version. Obviously the start will be the same. We go for the projectile damage. Then we go over here and pick up the Primal Spirit. Again, this one's very important for mana regeneration earlier. And then after that we go for the movement speed here, for the movement speed here. And at this point, I like to pick up the crit and the elemental resistance. And then at this point, again, I also would like to pick up HP, and then I unspec out of mana. And then I pick up even more HP. And this is when we start going for damage. We don't travel here, but at this point, we travel here, and we pick up the totem nodes. In addition to that, we pick up the 30% twice summon. And then over here, we go for crit immediately. At this point, I also want to make sure, if I can, and I have a falling because we are level 34, I want to make sure that instead of the faster attacks, I get the critical strikes. Because at this point, with this skill tree, you can have close to 50% crit already, which is a lot of damage. And effectively 50% crit is 40% more attack damage. And you don't have the requirement of your accuracy being higher than your HP all the time, which can fuck up your damage if you don't pay attention to it. Which, let's face it, oftentimes you don't. And then at this point, your HP is quite low. 700 is, So I travel down here and pick up Thick Skin. Then I obviously take up this one, which is a delayed Graceful Assault. But by this point we are level 44, but our HP should look good again. And then obviously I do the exact same thing I did with the other build, where we pick up these dexterity nodes, and then we unspec out of the damage, and we go for the HP and the damage nodes right here. Again, if you want to pick up the 10% movement speed or spell suppression, and maybe even pick up the elemental resistance node right here. Obviously, if you remember, we pick up Onslaught first, and then Phasing second, and then obviously the Avatar of the Veil later, and then the Avatar of the Chase. Quickly wanted to mention that, and by this point you will travel over here to Golem's Blood, but at the bottom. Over here, and then we pick up the totem nodes, and at this point we want to get the crit chance. Now obviously if you want, you can get the crit chance here first. It doesn't really matter whether you get the crit chance here or there, but at some point you're going to replace that with 5% less damage. And then obviously you also want to pick up the increases and reductions to projectile speed applied to damage. Usually at this point, like around level 60, my accuracy rating starts to fall down, so I pick up this node together with the dexterity. It gives us more accuracy rating. This should get you back to around 100% accuracy rating. Yeah, and then I pick up this node right here. We do the same thing with the Grace, and then we pick up the increased effect on you. We travel up here, we pick up the HP, we pick up the crit, and at this point it is the same skill tree as the one before. But that's a great thing about this build. It doesn't need to be perfect because you can tweak things a lot. And I don't want to go into too much more detail on this because at this point your goal is to explore the game, which is also why I didn't talk about any of the expansions except for essences, because I feel like this is something that you should explore and see what you like. And this build will give you the opportunity to do so. You should be able to do 99% of the content, 90% of the content, which is good enough for a first build. The program that I use to plan out and show you the build is called Path of Building. I will put the link in the description, but you can also put in Path of Building into Google. Then you should get to this website and you can download it right here. This should download you an executable, and the only thing you have to do is run it. You can then start your program and plan out your builds just like I did. Additionally, if you want to check or test out other builds and see what other people are doing, you could go to a website called POE.Ninja. This website has a builds tab, and here you can select the class that you're interested in. For example, for us it would be Radar, and then you can filter on the left by, for example, Artillery Ballista. Right here. This then shows you a list of all the high-level characters in the game currently that are using this ability. For example, the first one, who is level 100, is using Artillery Ballista, Frenzy, and ensnaring arrow. You can then click on this guy, you can check out the links, the weapon that he's using, the skill tree, the Ascendancy right here, and then further down below there is a neatly packed list of all of the supports and abilities that he's using. You can already see that he's using mostly the same abilities, but also some additional ones. For example, instead of Frostblink, he's using Dash. And look, he's also using Steel Skin, but without the cast when damage taken support. So this is usually a great way to check whether you can improve your build or not. And so I will put the link to the website into the description as well. Now, one last thing that I wanted to talk about is how you can actually get the build into your Path of Building. If you go to import and export build, you have this build sharing option right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate the build that I have set up here, and then I'm going to share that with pastebin.com. I'm going to share this link right here in the YouTube video with you guys. And now, if you want to import this one, you're going to copy it and then paste it into the to import a build, enter URL or code above. And then it should say URL is valid, pastebin.com, and then you import. And this should give you the build that I'm using. Okay, so we put in Artillery Ballista, elemental damage with attacks, cold damage, and faster attacks. Then we go back to the Lunaris Temple. Don't worry if by this time you don't have a 4-link ready and you are still operating on a 3-link. Try to get at least 2 greens and 1 red, which you should already have. And then instead of using the faster attacks, attacks, keep that for later and use elemental damage, the artillery ballista and the added cold damage. Okay, over here in this area you try to find these steps that lead upwards, and that's when you know you're going the right way. And then on this right here, if there's one wagon, that is the right way. If there's two wagons, it's the wrong way. And so I usually say, okay, this is the one and only way to go. Okay, once you're done with her, don't forget to pick up the recipe. Once you kill her, you actually get a skill point, so make sure to pick that up from this guy right here. Next, we teleport to the Ebony Barracks and then run to the right, which will lead us to the Gardens, in which we will find our last and final Trial of the Ascendancy. We go to the Gardens here, and this is where we pick up our last Ascendancy trial, which we'll do right away once we have that. When you follow the thick way, you're going to encounter a waypoint, and from the waypoint, you're trying to go basically straight top, because there's going to be another one of these books, which means another Ascendancy trial. And this is where we log out for the last time. Now we go back to the town and we have all of our Ascendancy trials unlocked, which means we can now finally go into it. And not only that, we can also get the teleporter here. Okay, and usually in these areas, I just run to the top right. It's not always correct. And there are internet websites or there are websites that can tell you where to go, but I don't bother. The difference is a couple of seconds. Okay, over here you have another recipe. Pick that up. All resistances, very important for later. One thing to note about the Trial of Ascendancy is that you're not supposed to die. If you die, you have to restart over again. You cannot revive in the middle of the Ascendancy. So keep that in mind when going through these traps, because there's going to be some of them. And be very careful not to die to anything. But if you have been taking care of your resistances so far and your HP pool is reasonably high, you should deal with this no problem and you shouldn't die at all. You can enchant your gloves with some special effects. And then obviously we pick ourselves Radar. And I always go for Onslaught. Permanent Onslaught. Upgrade HP flasks. Don't forget to do that. If you don't have a level 30 HP flask by this point, I would recommend you buy one here. I think it's very important to keep your flasks updated. And your links. Fuck. Maybe? No. Fuck. I really want this item. Okay, so when you are done, you go back here and then you follow the thick way. The tower follows the same principle as the ancient pyramid. If you spawn on the bottom left, then it is very likely that you will find the stairs to the next stage in the opposite corner, meaning bottom left, the opposite would be top right. Following that principle, you should be able to get to the top and then beat the final boss, which will conclude Act 3. And this guy usually just want to run around so he doesn't hit you. He inflicts a bleed on you. If you have a level 30 HP flasks, you should be fine. Once you beat the boss, there's a way that opens up, which will lead to the Aqueduct, which you just need to follow in order to get to the next town. And then you are in Act 4. And then we continue down below. Past this point, there's not going to be much that is new to you as a beginner. And so I'm going to skip over most things. I will still give in some quest hints. But past this point, you should feel confident enough to explore the game for what it is. And in this area, you want to find this book right here. This is usually where the boss is. You have to be careful. This guy actually deals a lot of damage. You kill the boss, pick up the flag, then you go back to the town, sell your stuff and enter the mines level 1. You run through it, enter the mines level 2, and in that area you make sure that you pick up the ghost, which is another skill point that you need. After that, you get to the crystal veins, you just run through it, and then you have the option to go to the left and to the right. You have to kill both of these bosses. There's 2 areas. Make sure you pick up the skill point, which you get from this old guy right here, and after that you will be able to progress further into the belly of the beast. Once you get to the harvest, there's actually a cool strategy that you can do in there, where you pick up the teleporter and then you will go to the right. There you will encounter your first boss. Once you kill it, you take a teleport back to town, and then teleport back to the teleporter, giving you a slight edge in speed. After that, you kill the 2 remaining bosses and loop back to the beginning to fight the final boss. Once you're done with that, go back to town, sell all the items that you've gotten, and then make your way up north. Diala also offers you support gems. I usually don't pick up any of these because we have already locked in our falling. I usually pick up nothing here. It's nothing worth taking. And then you can continue on to Act 5. In Act 5, your objective is to try to get maximum resistances at least, which means 75% on each slot, fire, cold and lightning. Because by the end of the act, when you kill the last boss, you're going to get reduced resistances by 30%, which turns 75% into 45%, and that is definitely not enough to continue. So my goal oftentimes is to get at least 75% plus an additional additional 20%. Better even 105% across the board at minimum, which will leave you at 75 when the minus 30% resistances kick in. This can be achieved by going to your crafting bench and picking up any items that have open suffixes and crafting resistances on them. This is also where the double resistances from the lab can come in handy. In this area, you're usually going to get to a point where you can't walk left anymore. Maybe I'm already past that point. So yeah, when you get to that point, this is the right way to go. We have to do the loop around here. When you get to the control blocks, you usually want to stick somewhat to the left, because there's going to be a book that you have to pick up, which will give us another skill point. Do not forget that. Once you pick that up, you usually want to head somewhat to the top right. And once you can't go top right anymore, you're going to head to the right until there's an opening. In the Oriav Square, you want to head to the left and then go straight up until you get to a bridge. There you just follow the streets, which should lead you top and then to the right. And then you get to the Templar Courts. The general layout of this area is somewhat of a loop around. You want to head to the right mostly, and then once you get to this university lecture hall or room, you want to go bottom to the left bottom, and then you get to the Chamber of Innocence. This is a great area to level up, and if you're new or you feel like you are weak, in this area there's a bunch of monsters and a bunch of loot that you can find. Usually on league launch, if I feel a bit weak and I know that in the next act I will be even weaker, I will level up till 45, even 46 in here. The goal for this act that I set for myself is 1.3 thousand HP and at least 90% resistances across the board. Except for chaos resistance, of course. Don't look at chaos resistance. That is a stat that we are going to ignore until we get to maps. Once you feel strong enough, you can enter the Sanction of Innocence. And this is where you will fight Innocence. I'm not going to spoil the fight for you because I think it is a great fight and I feel like you should enjoy and figure it out yourself. Once you're done though, go back to town and then talk to Lani. Once you're done with her, you also want to talk to Valenta. We get another skill point, which is Poggies. After that, we teleport back to the Chamber of Innocence. There we will encounter a guy that you, if you want to, can talk to, and then we will head to the Torch Courts. This is the reverse of the Templar Courts that we had earlier. Basically another loop around, just in reverse. Once you get to the Ravaged Square, pick up the teleporter and then go and enter the Ossuary. In here the layout is another loop around. You get this sign of purity and then you continue on with the Ravaged Square. In the Ravaged Square, if you want to save some time and pick up all the skill points, there's a trick that you can do. Once the area opens up past the bridge, place down a portal and then head straight down, somewhat to the right. That's a difficult word. Reliquary. We're going to enter the Reliquary. You want to run to the top right, check that corner, then you run to the bottom right, check that corner, and then you run to the bottom left. After you are done, you're going to head straight up back to the teleporter. We teleport to town, get ourselves our last skill point, and then if we have done it fast enough, the portal should still be open, which will bring you back to the Ravaged Square. Now I was a dummy and got distracted, so for me the portal disappeared. If that happens to you, just teleport back to the teleporter in the Ravaged Square, and then once it opens up, we run straight to the left. This is where we get to the rooftop and there we fight Innocence. Again, I'm not going to spoil the boss. Your resistances will be reduced by 30%. Again, last warning, this is where you want to make sure that you have enough for the next act. In Act 6, if you notice by the way, this is a reskin of Act 1. In the Mudflats, you want to head somewhat to the top right. There you will encounter these, I don't know, bowman looking dudes. Kill the black one, which will give you an item, and then head somewhat to the top left. When you get to the ridge, pick up the teleporter and then teleport back to town. This is where we go to the left and clear the Twilight Strand. You need to make sure that every single monster in this area is killed before the quest is done. The reason why we do that quest is because as a reward, we get every single skill gem unlocked in the game and we can now buy them from Lily Roth. So at this point, if you're missing any key support gems for your build, this is where you pick them up. After that, we go back to the ridge. Just try to follow the general direction of it. I don't really know where the right way is. I usually just wing it. And then you get to the prison. Make sure to go and pick up the Trial of the Ascendancy in this area. This is where we're going to have to start picking up Trials of the Ascendancy again. Luckily, there's only 3 that we have to pick up before we can go and make another Trial of the Ascendancy run. When you're done with Chevron's Tower, go back to the town, sell any items that you want to, and then go and teleport to the Prisoner's Gate. You want to go to the opposite of where the mountains are. Past that ledge is an entrance to a new area in which you can find a boss. Killing this boss is important because it gives us another skill point. When you're done with him, just loop back and then follow the road to the next area. In the next area, just follow the road. In the riverways, try to locate the teleporter, and when you get to it, notice how there's these two pillars and somewhat of a stony path. Follow that path to the next area because this is where we have to kill yet another boss that will also give us a skill point. Picking up these skill points is very important and vital. In case you want to check if you have missed any of the quests, you can type in /passives and then it gives you a list of all the quests that will offer you a skill point. Right now I have everything set to 1, but if there's a 0 somewhere, you will know that this quest is something that you should do. When you're done with all the bosses, go back to town and sell everything you have and then turn in all the quests. After that, I teleport back to the riverways and head about somewhat top right. This is where you will find a somewhat awkward looking bridge which will lead you to the southern forest. The layout of southern forest is somewhat weird. First you have to go down a bit, cross a log, then you go up again, cross 2 more logs, and then you try to head right. You dangle along the mountain wall down until you find a teleporter and an entrance to a cave. In the cave you pick up the flag chest, pick up the flag, and then continue on. In the beacon you wanna generally head top right. There's not really much of a rule system to it, but you know you're going the right way when you start to elevate in height. This is where you will encounter 2 of these mechanisms. Stay in the circle, make sure that both pillars reach the end, at which point you will burn the black flag and then run down to meet the captain of the ship. Again, I won't spoil the boss for you, but after that you will reach Act 7. Once you get to Act 7, you need to make sure that you talk to Sin. He will show you the Pantheon. These are passives that you can choose from that add defenses to your character. For example, the Soul of Rishlata makes your life flasks gain charges. Make sure that you pick these up because they can be quite powerful and helpful in certain situations. I usually pick up the Soul of Rishlata together with the Soul of the Brime King. We could choose one of the big rings and one of the small rings. When you progress through the broken bridge, there is a temple that usually looks somewhat like this. You need to go in here and pick up another quest item, which we need later to get a flask. When we get to the crossroads, pick up the waypoint and then head straight right. In the Felshire ruins, all you have to do is follow the road. This will lead you to an ancient catacomb. In there, we need to make sure that we pick up yet another trial of the Ascendancy, and on top of that, your objective in this area is to find a small sarcophagus. If you click on it, you can teleport into a new area. In there, you're looking for a quest item. It is called the Container of Sins. Pick it up and then teleport back to the crossroads. This time, we follow the road to the left. In the Chamber of Sins level 1, you want to locate the same area that you were located in Act 2. It looks somewhat like a circle, and this is where we want to go. Only this time, there's going to be a quest NPC and a map device. We need to put in the quest item and activate it. This will open up portals to another area in which we have to kill a boss. I don't want to spoil too much, and I think I already do, so I'm going to skip over the boss. But once you're done, talk to Silk and get the keys. Follow the waypoint's direction and you will find the entrance to the Chamber of Sins level 2. And just like in Act 2, we have to find another trial of the Ascendancy here. Make sure that you complete it. After the Chamber of Sins, you will progress through the den, and then you progress through the Ashen Fields, and then you get to the Northern Forest. In the Northern Forest, you're gonna do something special. You will find the entrance to the cave called the Dread Thicket. Place a portal there and then move on. Our general direction is north. After that we get to the causeway, and after that we get to the Wild City. Before you enter the area, make sure you pick up Kishar's Star. This is another quest objective that will give us a skill point later. The Wild City is somewhat annoying. Your objective in here is to find the center of the city where the teleporter is. Take it, then teleport back to town, and hopefully your portal is still there. Enter it and then enter the Dread Thicket. In here we have to pick up 7 fireflies, and in addition to that there's going to be a cave. In this cave there's another boss that we need to kill because he gives us yet another skill point. And when you pick up the last firefly, you're going to get a quest objective notification at the bottom. This is where you teleport back to town and then talk to every NPC in there. William Roth will offer you another flask. Once you're done with that, go back to the Wild City and enter the Temple of Decay. This is straightforward. You spawn on the bottom left, you go to the top right, somewhere in that general direction should be where the next area is. You do that enough times until you reach the final boss. Again, I'm not going to spoil it, but this is when you reach Act 8. In Act 8 you want to find the entrance to the big wall and then progress to the city. And this is where we're going to do our next trial of the Ascendancy. Here, the same rules apply as in the first trial of the Ascendancy. You cannot die. If you do, you have to restart. So make sure that you take your time because some of the traps are really annoying to deal with. For me as a raider, I usually pick up phasing. When you're done with the Trial of the Ascendancy, you want to enter the Toxic Conduits. There's not much to talk about it here. You just progress through them until you encounter your first boss, Dowaedry. This one is actually very annoying to deal with, so good luck. After you're done with that, make sure you pick up the teleporter and the crafting recipe and then head to the top right. Top right is always the correct choice because the area that we enter after is actually an area in which we get a skill point if we finish a quest. So once you get to that area, you want to look out for this part right here. It's a small wooden bridge that leads to a small plateau where you pick up a quest item and then you run to the right, somewhere to the right and down. If you ran the right way, you should see an entrance to a new area called the Resurrection Site. This is where you will encounter Clarissa. Finish the event and then head back. Only this time you run to the top right, which should lead you to the Grain Gate. Navigating this area is actually quite simple. There's a lot of entrances and a lot of houses, but the correct houses have a dead soldier next to them. You want to enter 1 to 2 houses and go through them, and then you want to look out for a legion of black soldiers. They are usually found in an open area and you want to kill them all. You have to get close to them and then you kill them because they give you another skill point. Once you kill them, you usually have to find one last entrance into a house and then you can enter the Imperial Fields. Nothing much to say about this area, just progress through until you find a temple. In here you want to find a teleporter and then progress straight further until you get to level 2. In level 2, look out for the boss. Once you've killed the boss, teleport back to the teleporter in the Solaris Temple level 1, because there should be another way that lets you progress further. Act 8 is built like a ring. You can complete it from the left or from the right side. You know you've found the right way when there are stairs leading up to the Solaris Concourse. You progress through this area, find the teleporter, and then you progress to the harbor bridge. You just run over the bridge until you get to the Lunaris Concourse. Over there you want to run straight up until you pick up the teleporter and then head straight down again to the left to find an entrance to the bathhouse. In here you want to find an open area with a guy that is charging with his shield. You want to kill him and pick up the Wings of Asteri. Also in this area, make sure that you pick up the Trial of the Ascendancy. It is usually located somewhat in the top left or somewhat in the top right. Once you're done with the Trial of the Ascendancy, find the entrance to the High Gardens, because in there is yet another boss that we need to kill to get a skill point. This one is actually quite difficult, so make sure that you don't die to him. He's really tough. When you are done with him, you go back to the town, and this is where we turn in all the quests. When you're done in town, teleport back to the Lunaris Concourse, because we still have to pick up another orb. You're going to run straight up into the temple, kill the dude, and then go back to the harbor bridge. Only this time we are going to enter the Sky Shrine. This is where we fight the end boss of Act 8. Again, I'm not going to spoil it, have fun. And now, once you are done with the boss, this is when we enter the famous Blood Aqueducts. I usually farm here until I have about 3500 HP and I'm somewhat around level 68, maybe even 70. I do that because I play hardcore. You don't have to do that on softcore, but you should know that in this area there are special divination cards that can drop that are called Humility. These cards, when combined, give you a no-stat 6-link chest, Tabula Rasa. As part of gearing up and getting my HP to the point where it's about 3500, I make sure that my resistances are overcapped to the point where they are at least 105, 110. Because by the end of Act 10, our resistances are going to be reduced again by 30%. So if you don't have maximum resistances by this point, I urge you to get at least 80%, 75%, better even 105. Okay, so once you're done farming, you can progress by going into the city of Act 9 and then going to the very top right. You go through the descent and then you get to the Vestiri Desert. In there you want to locate the teleporter and then you want to locate an urn that is surrounded by pillars. You activate that urn and kill all the monsters. This will drop you an item called the Stormblade. You pick that up and then you run straight up until you find a somewhat broken bridge that is also blocked by a sandstorm. This is where you drop down a portal to town. In town, speak to Petarius and Vanya and also to Sin. And then with Petarius and Vanya again. They will give you an item called the Bottled Storm. You take that to the bridge, which will allow you to progress. In here you want to find an area called the Sand Pit. I'm not going to spoil the fight, but once you're done, teleport back to the town and go back to the Vestiri Desert. This is where we head to the somewhat top left part of the map until we find an area called the Foothills. Our first objective in the area is to find the teleporter, which should be located somewhat straight up. If you find it, then you can run even further up. In here you want to find the Basilisk. Kill him, pick up the item, and then go back to the Foothills. At which point you want to progress somewhat to the left while also taking a look out for the Boulderback. This is a bull that you need to kill and pick up an item from. If you progress further to the left, you start to see rail tracks, and this is where you find the tunnel. And guess what, boys? We are going to do another trial of the Ascendancy here. This one is usually located right at the front, either to the left or to the right. Mostly to the left though. And then after that, head straight through the area and you should be getting to a new area called the quarry. In here you want to pick up the teleporter, which should be located somewhat in the middle of the area, and then head straight to the top right. You should find at least one entrance, either to the Shrine of the Winds or to another area. The Shrine of the Winds is something we have to do because guess what? There's another boss. It gives us another skill point. Once you're done with that, you can finally head to town and turn in all of the quests that you have been doing. The last bit that we have to do in here is find the other area. In here we need to kill another boss. Then we have the 2 items required to talk to Sin, and he will open up a way for us to go into the belly of the beast. You just progress through until you get to the heart. In the heart you kill all the 3 bosses and then you get to the last boss. Again, I'm not going to spoil it. Have fun. Once you kill it, talk to Lily. And then you get to Act 10. Act 10 is a reskin of Act 5, so you should be familiar with somewhat of the layout of it, and it should be easy to progress. We start on the rooftop and go to the left, free Brandon, and then head straight down to the Ravaged Square. Progressing through here is somewhat difficult if you've never done it. You wanna go somewhat to the top right and then find an entrance through a bridge. You cross that bridge and then you head straight to the left until you find a teleporter. And you should be familiar with this area. This is the ossuary. You have to enter it, only this time you have to go 1 stage deeper. The Bone Pit is an area that loops around, so at some point in here you find a chest. And this chest is very important because it contains a quest item that we need to continue. Additionally, in here, somewhat close to the chest, is another trial of the Ascendancy. This is the last trial of the Ascendancy that we have to do, so make sure you pick that up, and you should have 3 trials of the Ascendancy by this point. Then you go back to the Ravaged Square and you continue on following the destroyed streets, which will lead you to the Torched Courts. In here we have the same thing as in Act 5, the loop around. This time the Chamber of Innocence is not a great place to farm, so I usually just rush through this area and get to the boss in here. I'm not going to spoil it again, but you have to pick up the item that he drops and then you teleport back to the Ravaged Square, at which point you walk down again to the Reliquary again. Only this time we want to pick up another quest item, the Teardrop. Back in the Ravaged Square, you're going to run straight down to the left, because this is where you get to the control blocks. In this area is yet another boss. This is the actual last skill point that we have to do. Okay, and when you're done with all of that, you talk to all the NPCs in town. They should all give you quest rewards, and then it's time. We do our Trial of the Ascendancy one last time, kill the last boss, and if you're following along as a raider, you obviously want to pick up the Exposure. After the Trial of the Ascendancy, teleport to the Ravaged Square, which is where Innocence will be waiting for you. Not much to say about this, you progress and then you fight the final boss of the campaign. I'm not going to spoil this one for you, it is a great fight and I wish you good luck. But once you are done with that, you are finally at maps. And I think at this point, if you've gotten this far, congratulations. Getting to maps is very simple. Make sure that you talk to Lani first though, because she offers you a skill book with 2 skill points. And then you talk to Lily and she will teleport you to Oriath. In this area you go to an NPC called Karek and he will offer you a map. You take that map, walk down the stairs and then you put it into the map device. You activate it and this is when you will do your first map. I'm not going to explain the entire mapping system for you, but basically you get maps, you do the maps, you find more maps. You do those maps, you try to complete all the maps, and then you try to go for the Atlas passive. I myself am not a very good Atlas passive build planner, so my advice there wouldn't be great. What I can tell you as a hint though, going for essences as a beginner, so picking up this part right here, your maps contain an additional essence, paired with essences found in your maps are a tier higher, and then combined with shrieking essences are duplicated, are very powerful nodes that will help you get strong equipment even without any investment into trading. If you're one of them trade enjoyers, feel free to do so. But other than that, look up guides for the Atlas tree. It is a big one. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough. I know this is a lot to take in. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. I will do more content about games. Until the next time, have a good one. Peace.